Hello everyone, my name is Hank Lewis. I am a professor and discipline lead for economics at Lone Star College, University Park. I am here today to talk to you about the economic impact of COVID-19 with a special focus on the innovations that result from it, which are in the last 8 minutes of my main video. COVID-19 has had a severe impact on everybody. We've had a higher mortality rate. We have had a lot of businesses close. We've had a lot of businesses have to pivot how they operate. And so the results of all this are going to be felt in our economy at the macro and micro level for decades to come. This is just an overview for all of you to consider. But as we are dealing with Innovation Week, I want to talk about especially the innovations that have come out of COVID-19 pandemic and how they're going to be felt in the economy and how they're going to change the way we're doing businesses and doing business in the near future. Well, here's a little overview. The COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on every single person in the world. Millions of people are dead. Many have been hospitalized or dealing with long-term effects of the illnesses. Many households, businesses, and markets have been on lockdown due to the spread of the virus. Bottom line is the economic impact is noticeable, it is severe, and it cannot be ignored. We're going to probably be feeling the after effects in the global economy, and the American economy, and the Houston economy for the next decade. But that's not to say that there aren't those businesses, individuals, markets that have actually benefited from it. And in fact, necessity is considered to be the mother of invention, but I also say disaster is the father of innovation. We're going to talk briefly about some macro and microeconomic impacts, those who are winners and losers, but of course our main point is what are the economic innovations that have resulted from this pandemic? First of all, the COVID-19 pandemic is something we would classify as an exogenous shock to the business cycle. Business cycles, of course, are fluctuations in economic activity over the, period of time here, over the years, over the decades. We go up and down, kind of like we're riding up and down hills, but they're like hills that have potholes like parts of Jones Road. Exogenous shocks make the business cycles run rougher. In fact, those are what cause the potholes and bumps on the road of the business cycle. These are primarily natural disasters or production supply chain issues or a combination of both. In the 1970s, we had that huge Arab oil embargo followed by the price gouging that happened. And this ended up causing us to have to change our technological base to stop using oil-based fuels in industry. The COVID-19 pandemic is another example of an exogenous shock to the business cycle that has caused all these reverberations and bumps here. The thing about these exogenous shocks is that they make the business cycle behave in weird ways. Now, normally, there's inflation when spending goes up and unemployment goes down and GDP goes up. However, with an exogenous shock, you have spending go up while unemployment goes up and prices go up and GDP goes down. They don't act like they usually do. And so these create confusion. The general public doesn't understand why this is happening. The politicians don't understand. And the economists, we're kind of going. Now, on the macro level, that's dealing with the whole country at the big level. Also, you can talk about the whole world. We've seen a big decrease in consumer spending. Reduced hours, layoffs, increased unemployment, the lockdown, people aren't going out to restaurants or shopping as much. That's pretty obvious. Gross private domestic investment spending is spending by businesses on capital resources for the sake of producing goods and services. We've seen a lot less spending on equipment due to drop in sales, but other businesses spending has gone up. Businesses have had to change operations to curbside, delivery, or social distancing. Amazon had to buy more fleet vehicles, for example. They had to set up more distribution hubs. So gross private domestic investment spending, it's in flux. Government spending has had a big increase because of increased spending on things like forgivable paycheck protection loans, increased unemployment benefits, the stimulus payments, etc. But that has also meant there's been an increase in the national debt. The national debt prior to COVID-19 was in the $24 billion range. It's now hitting about $27 billion range, which is about $4 or $5 billion bigger than our gross domestic product, our total production in the country during the year. Interest rates have dropped to near zero at the Federal Reserve level because of easy monetary policy. The Fed lowers interest rates, the Fed tries to pump more currency, more money into the market in a spendable and a lendable form to try to stimulate spending. And that's what they've been doing here. Interest rate floors at the Fed level where they loan money to banks are near zero. Net export spending is in flux. We had the China trade war prior to the pandemic, which caused net export spending for both the U.S. and China to drop. The net effect of that has probably been worse for the United States, let me add. But there's also been drops in shipping internationally. These include things like different types of materials and technological components aren't being shipped as much, but it also means that we have less goods and services being shipped, and they're being shipped more slowly. And so net export spending, uncertain. Now, we have seen interruptions in supply chains, the distributions of material and components and so forth due to the trade war and these international and domestic lockdowns. Labor is less available due to illness. We see a reconfiguration cost for businesses to accommodate for social distancing. Lone Star College has had to deal with that, along with increasing sanitation costs due to increased cleaning protocols. And social distancing is requiring a larger workspace with fewer workers, leading to lower production in industries where workers have to be on the premises to be productive. That's not all industries, but if you think about factories, you think about meat processing plants, you think about restaurants and bars, people have to be there to actually serve. Now, the thing is, those are all what we've seen during the pandemic, but what about afterwards? The budget deficit is the degree to which government spending exceeds tax revenue. We're going to see increased budget deficits and a continuing increased national debt because of the continued use of expansionary fiscal policy. This is going to ultimately lead to higher taxes in the long run, by the way, to pay this down if the government intends to do so. We're going to see lower production for years to come due to the pandemic. Different types of expansion for businesses may have been put on hold because of reconfiguration. A lot of businesses have shut down and some have exited the market. So again, we're going to see lower production, lower gross domestic product for years to come. The big risk that a lot of economists are watching for right now is cost-push inflation. You see increased price levels combined with increased unemployment and increased interest rates all at the same time. This is the end result of all this borrowing, all this stimulus. Sooner or later, you're going to have to, basically, the chickens come home to roost and you have to pay up. I always advise everybody to look at the U.S. debt clock, because if you do, it's going to make your head spin to see how fast it's going. I'm not going to spend time on that right now because I want to get to the innovation. Now, at the micro level, this is individual businesses, consumers, and markets, we've seen some impacts as well. Market demand and market supply, the two great market forces, are in a state of flux for lots of industries. The use of technology, the available third-party services, the ability to pivot between delivery methods determined success or failure during the pandemic, and some succeeded, some failed. This largely depends upon how quickly could businesses adapt to the new normal. Some businesses were very good at shifting. You think about Amazon, you think about Walmart, you think about any restaurant that already was using third-party delivery services, and if those restaurants, those businesses were able to basically deal with a lot more delivery, a lot more customer service, where it's basically in and out, as opposed to people stay, people browse, people do that kind of stuff that they would normally do in a business, you did great. But if your model was built largely on the customer has to be there and be there for an extended period of time, that wasn't so good. Now, let's talk about this. In some markets, the demand that represents the consumer's desire to buy products at any price have increased. Whoops. Okay, did not mean to go backwards there. Sanitation and cleaning equipment. Think about what happened to the demand for masks, for example, and hand sanitizer. Personal protective equipment, like face shields, and of course, masks. Home computer and teleconferencing hardware and software, broadband internet service. The demand has increased there. And of course, delivery of food and goods. These are all areas where the demand by consumers for these products and services has increased. Where it's decreased, travel, airlines, cruises, resorts, hotels. How many of y'all have not traveled in a long time? I wanted to travel. I was supposed to go to Guangzhou, China, but that didn't work out for me because of this situation. Commercial real estate. Since a lot more people are working from home and there's been less need to go to the office and businesses have to adapt to the situation, a lot of businesses have shrunk their headquarters, they've shrunk their office footprint, if you will. Entertainment venues such as bars and dining and restaurants decreased during the pandemic. Supply. This is the production by the businesses and producers in the market versus prices. Internet broadband services. Boy, was AT&T and Verizon and Xfinity all out there putting in more boxes, laying more fiber optics, putting in more towers. Internet and broadband services had a huge increase in supply. Third-party delivery services, where's my third, have also increased as well. I mean, think about Uber Eats, Postmates, Favor. All those companies are doing great guns worth of businesses. Cleaning supplies and sanitizer goes without saying. That's one of the things where a lot of new businesses got into there. There's more businesses that entered the market and the supply shifted to the right. We saw more increase. And thanks to a changing of the laws in Texas, these laws were already like that in Louisiana, let me add, and other states, the delivery of alcoholic beverages, especially the delivery of spirits and beer and wine by third parties, has increased the supply of alcohol for home consumption. Some people say the pandemic increased the demand too. Vitamins and supplements. The supply of this has increased because a lot of people were researching ways to boost their immunity. Where did the market supply decrease? Products requiring imported materials. There was huge supply chain interruptions. How many of y'all tried to buy dumbbells or home fitness equipment during the pandemic? It was very difficult for a long time because a lot of those were manufactured in China. Now, several businesses in Texas ramped up and started making weights, and as a result, we actually later on saw an increase in supply, but during the bulk of the pandemic, the supply of this stuff decreased. Anywhere imported materials were used, we saw a supply chain interruption that made supply decrease. Labor-intensive industries saw their supplies decrease. And any services requiring close face-to-face contact between providers and customers decreased during the pandemic. And they may remain muted for some time to come because a lot of people are thinking, I really don't want to eat out in a restaurant even though I'd like to, because how do I know that I won't get or transmit this virus? Even if I'm vaccinated, how do I know for sure? That's going to be something where a lot of restaurants have had to adapt. Some other microeconomic factors that have increased costs of production. Increased production costs are a big thing that have come out of this pandemic for a number of industries. The use of third-party delivery services but charge fees on both ends. The reason why I don't use Uber Eats or DoorDash and instead will do pickup or basically deal with a business that delivers itself is because they charge the restaurant a fee, they charge the customer a fee, and restaurants that operate on very thin profit margins actually end up losing money, especially the small local ones, and those are the ones we wish to support. But that has made costs increase. Liability costs for employees and customers exposure to COVID-19. One of the reasons why a lot of businesses were very quick to shut down and lock down was because there is still not been enough legal answers about, if I have an employee that gets COVID-19 and they spread it to the customers, will I be sued? Right now it seems like the answer is no, because of the way the government seems to be approaching it, but after the fact we may be seeing Jim Adler, the Texas Hammer, suing over stuff like that, and who knows how that's going to work in this kind of tort-led law or something like that. That's not for the lawyers to answer. Most businesses have had to go to huge increased cleaning and sanitation protocols. They've had to buy more sanitizer. They've had to more thoroughly clean. Of course, some people are saying, it makes me wonder if those businesses did any cleaning at all beforehand. Trust me, as somebody who's worked in the restaurant industry, most restaurants have to be very careful about their cleanliness because of the way health inspectors are, but this has been ramped up 100-fold, and that's made costs rise. The reconfiguration of facilities for social distancing is a big deal. Some restaurants, even after Governor Abbott relaxed the restrictions, have said we're still going to operate at 50% capacity in order to protect our employees and to protect our customers. And so that means space the tables out more, fewer people in there, and the reconfiguration has cost a lot of businesses a lot of money. The installation of protective equipment, fixtures, purchasing masks and gloves, and even hazard pay. Let's talk about the fixtures for a moment. How many of y'all have gone to H-E-B and seen all the plexiglass booths around the cashier stands? How many of y'all have gone to Starbucks and seen the plexiglass shields everywhere? How many of y'all have gone to some fast food restaurants that still are doing drive-through only and they've added extra shields in the drive-through? That costs money. And again, it's increasing costs here. Hazard pay, though, and increased health insurance premiums. Folks, when you have a lot more claims filed on insurance, premiums go up. And when we have something like a pandemic happen, the claims go up even higher. But the thing is, one person's adversity is another person's opportunity. And so there have been winners and losers of the pandemic. And let's talk about who won. Grocery stores like H-E-B, home goods stores like Target, home improvement like Lowe's and Home Depot, home electronics like Best Buy, internet-based video productivity equipment and software. These types of retailers have done very well in the pandemic because people have needed these goods and services more, businesses have needed them more, and it's been a great opportunity for them to really expand their customer base. Any businesses that pivoted quickly to curbside delivery did well. Any businesses that provided services via Teleconference, they're deliverable that way. Think about telemedicine, for example. They've done well. Had infrastructure to handle quick delivery. Okay, again, Amazon and Walmart are the kings of this, but a number of other businesses have jumped on board as well. A well-capitalized chain restaurant. The Darden Group owns restaurants like Olive Garden, Yard House, and a whole bunch more. Those well-capitalized restaurant chains were very easily able to adapt to the new norm because they had a lot of money to spend. They found ways to work around and keep their employees working as they pivoted to curbside delivery. Those well-capitalized large chains did so well, mainly because they were well-known names and they had the money to basically stay afloat until they could pivot. We have a distillery near Lone Star University Park called Whitmeyer's. Whitmeyer's started making hand sanitizer. So did a whole bunch of local breweries and craft distilleries, and this happened everywhere. Wasn't hard to pivot on there, and once they got the approval from the FDA to make it, that stuff was being cranked out like there's no tomorrow. But those businesses that sold whiskey and beer, typically adding sanitizer, that was a big boom. That was a new line of business that was actually able to bring in revenue until they were able to handle ways to sell alcohol via remote. That was an awesome pivot. Losers. Any business that required close face-to-face contact to deliver goods and services, people need social distance, don't want to get the virus. Bars, nightclubs, movie theaters, and entertainment venues. Goes without saying. Pack the people in like what happened at Spire. You get fined, you get shut down. Better off to shut down, but you're going to lose money while you're closed. Travel and hospitality. Hotels, resorts, theme parks, cruises, and airlines. They didn't do so hot. Retailers. Folks, Joseph A. Banks, which was open for over 100 years, closed. Ann Taylor is on the ropes. Any type of business that was selling men's and women's business attire, types of clothing that would be used, for any type of professional deal went down because a lot of people were operating from home. People were getting comfortable in their PJs or wearing just business clothes from the neck up. Yep, that happened. Any business that was operating on the just-in-time inventory method. This is where essentially inventory is fulfilled every time something is sold, another one's replaced, but they didn't maintain backstock. Any business that refused to switch to just-in-time inventory and they kept backstock or kept a warehouse nearby, they did fine. But anybody that was operating under just-in-time, this was the wrong time to be using what would normally be a cost saver. Those businesses got hurt. Any retailers that were dealing with international supply chains were dealing with interruptions. Local, small, regional restaurants that failed to pivot to curbside delivery quickly. I cannot tell you how many restaurants I am so fond of in the Houston area. Bernie's Burger Bus is the first one that hits me. Tried to pivot. They tried so hard. They squeezed their savings. They borrowed as much as they could. They did not make it. They were in situations where the delivery costs of using Uber Eats was too high. The online platform for ordering didn't work for them. They got besieged by orders, could not fulfill them. They had supply chain interruptions. A lot of local restaurants have gone for good. Some of the ones that are still around, they had to close locations. Peli Peli, their original location over in Vintage Park by Lone Star University Park, closed. They still have the Galleria and their other area locations open, but that one closed because of rent versus foot traffic. It just didn't work for them. And the thing is, we've probably seen at least 20% of local restaurants in the Houston area close, and there may be more in the next year, depending upon how things happen as the economy reopens. But this is what we're wanting to look at. This is Innovation Week after all. Disaster is the father of innovation. Innovation is not quite the same as invention. Invention means you come up with something new that somebody didn't do before. Henry Ford did not invent the automobile. The automobile was invented in the 1840s in France. It was powered by steam. In fact, during the first test drive, it had an accident because they didn't think to install a braking system. But that's invention. Innovation is where something that already exists gets modified. Maybe the production process gets changed. Maybe certain elements of it are tweaked so that it works better and becomes viable, usable, practical. That's innovation. And the thing is, Henry Ford did not invent the automobile, but he innovated the way the automobile was produced by adapting methods that were suggested by Eli Whitney with standardized parts combined with divide and conquer approach to assembly. Before the introduction of the conveyor belt, they put car chassis on sawhorses, and people would run down left and right and install stuff, and then they started moving the vehicles and having the workers stay in one place. That innovation enabled the mass production of so many different things, and it sparked a huge industrial revolution in the United States. So let's talk about the innovations that have resulted. Contactless delivery, contactless anything. Anybody that was using near-field communications on their phone to pay with their phone versus using a credit card was probably happier because you didn't have to touch the machine. Anybody has a credit card that has a little broadcaster there for the low-frequency broadcasts. You basically hold it close, you don't touch it, easier to pay, you don't have to touch the machine. Anything that is done without direct contact of hand to surface, human to human, was something that became much more refined and well developed, and something that some people will probably be using a lot more as things go along. Service delivery via teleconference. The notion of telemedicine seems silly. Doctors need to actually come in and see you. Well, the only person that needs to see you really is whomever is going to draw blood or take a temperature, but some of these things, like the temperature, the blood pressure, can be done using electronic equipment in the home where the doctor can actually see the result. Blood tests and urine tests, things of that nature, have to be done in the lab, but the doctor doesn't have to be there for that. Similarly, therapy, psychological therapy, analysis, counseling. Anything that can be delivered via teleconference as a service. Think about yoga classes, for example, or different types of exercise classes like Zumba. I know a number of fitness instructors that weren't able to teach at their gyms. They started basically having people pay like a $5 admission fee, and they would teach classes from home using video equipment, and delivering the classes that way became a way for them to still make a living. And a lot of people prefer that because they're in the comfort of their own home and they don't have to go to a gym and worry about dealing with sweat from somebody else or possibly catching something. Higher level teleconferencing. Now the thing is, Zoom, Skype, WebEx, they all had initial problems with not being able to handle the load that came in, but once they added more servers, they found ways to do this at a higher level, and this has been something that has been a huge boon to education and other types of businesses that has replaced needing to go into the meeting. In fact, I think post-COVID-19, a lot of people are going to prefer teleconferencing, not just because of avoiding the risk of catching disease, but because why should we have to drive so many miles, pollute the air, put extra stress on ourselves when we can be more productive and just do it from home or do it from a location that's closer to home. Now, this is one that interests me as a food blogger, hankonfood.com, the creation of what are called ghost kitchen restaurants. A lot of local restaurants, Fat Eatery over out in Katy opened up a ghost kitchen in the Heights. And what it is it's a kitchen that only cooks food that is ordered via delivery systems, and delivery happens out of them. There is no tables, there is no bar. It is strictly kitchen workers and delivery people that are preparing this. In fact, there are some ghost kitchens that operate for multiple restaurants. People that are trained to cook the restaurant's dishes are cooking there and then delivering out of there, and you don't have the traditional restaurants set up there. These are actually set up for higher volume production for especially higher end food and also third-party delivery, and we're going to be seeing more of those ghost kitchens popping up everywhere. Of course, third-party delivery services, whoever invested in Uber, whoever invested in Favor, whoever has invested in DoorDash or any of these third-party delivery services, you probably made a nice return. Main reason why? These folks were working hand over fist. They were taking in fees hand over fist. This actually was something that has become more refined, and they're finding ways to deliver it better, faster, and hopefully eventually lower cost to the restaurants and to the consumer. But this has been something where essentially finding ways to handle larger volume of third-party delivery has been a huge outcome of this, and ways to be more efficient have come out of this. Higher level collaboration logistics software. Again, think about Microsoft Teams. That was something that was just coming around prior to the pandemic. It's now becoming status quo. I know people in the oil industry, people in education, people in other industries who are all doing great guns through Microsoft Teams, WebEx, Zoom, etc., and this is going to be the new norm. But the thing is, ways to find a way to deliver it properly, deliver it better audio, better video quality, fewer interruptions, more servers, better connections. There have been ways to do this that have been discovered in the process of all the errors and the hiccups. And this is going to be something that is developed and it's going to continue to be a bigger deal. Technology for use in sanitation of facilities, equipment, and inventory. I mean, it seems very logical. Ultraviolet light, steam, heat, alcohol, hydrogen peroxide. But how do you deliver these in a way that you don't waste material or energy? How do you deliver these things in mass? One of the things I saw on the news recently was that somebody has developed a almost robotic system that is installed inside airplanes that will just essentially go down the side of the plane with UV light and sterilize the plane after the passengers get off and after the physical cleaning is done. It actually costs less money, it is less labor intensive, and it actually produces a better level of clean, and it doesn't produce, bacteria or viruses that are resistant to alcohol. But the thing is, nobody would have come up with this idea beforehand because it wasn't necessary. But this extremely virulent strain of COVID-19 made them rethink sanitation. Let's also think about, the fact that some businesses have installed fogging machines to disperse hydrogen peroxide or alcohol through the vent system in certain rooms after people leave or during after hours. These types of liquids dispersed in fine mists can cover the room, sanitize the surfaces, and of course these are highly volatile liquids that evaporate at low temperatures. The next day you might have a scent of alcohol or hydrogen peroxide, but the thing is the room has been sanitized and it doesn't require as much labor. The development of this technology is going to continue as more people are going to insist on this level of sanitation. Touchless point of sale system. Okay, I mentioned those earlier. This is being rolled out on a higher level. I can't speak for everybody, but I know I've gotten new credit cards from my banks and new debit cards that are now basically having the broadcast frequency in there. Make sure you have an RFID resistant wallet, by the way, just in case. But the touchless point of sale system is going to be something more people are going to be using. People basically who are averse to it are now going to welcome it and trying to find ways for it to work better, have better security, and work more consistently. This has been part of the innovation. Faster, more flexible alterations to government policy to accommodate business and consumer needs due to lockdown, working remotely, and the need to social distance. One of the things that happened very quickly, which normally is not the case with government policy, has been things like means to protect people from being evicted, means to protect landlords from going bankrupt, means to protect businesses so they can pay their workers. Of course, this all comes with a price tag. The price tag means greater dependence on the government. It means a higher national debt. It's going to probably mean higher taxes in the future. But the fact that the government has become suddenly much more responsive in some of its policies to deal with the problem is going to set a precedent for years to come. There were already businesses I know that were shifting to cashless operations, and the reason why they were shifting to that is very simple. They didn't want to have a large amount of cash on the business premises to protect their workers and customers from robbery. More businesses are going to be going cashless. In fact, Bike Barn, a business I deal with, I brought my bike in to have some repairs recently. They don't take checks. They don't deal with cash anymore. It is strictly all electronic at the location in West Chase. Several restaurants I know were all electronic beforehand, and there's going to be more of that as we continue. What that means is you need better point of sale systems. You need ones that work better, that work faster, that are more secure, that more quickly get the money in the business's banking account. This is going to be something that is going to be more innovative, and it's going to be more flexible than it was in the past. Last but not least, faster manufacture and installation of protective fixtures. I was amazed at how quick HEB and several banks installed protective equipment in there as far as those plexiglass or thick plastic, what we call them, shields and booths put around workstations. In some cases, restaurants installed them even to put them in between social distancing so that each little seating area has its own shield in certain spots there to prevent transmission of it. Of course, some of them are better designed than others for obvious reasons, but the thing is there's going to be more of this. And again, we've already had 3D printing for a while, but this desire to manufacture these kind of things quickly and install them quickly is going to continue to happen because, again, people are going to be skittish about this. People are going to remember this pandemic for decades to come. So, there you have it. What I would project The main question I usually get is, what now? Well, a lot of things are going to change. As I mentioned before, those are going to be decentralized operations for a lot of businesses. This is going to be the way it's going to operate. People that have gotten used to working from home are going to demand that they work from home. A lot of people felt that many businesses lied to them, saying they couldn't work effectively from home, and since they've been able to for a year, it's going to be requested a lot more. Why waste time in traffic when you can be productive, when you can take care of other things, spend less money on gasoline, pollute less, and so forth? And this is going to be kind of something many employees, especially at the professional level, in any businesses that don't require face-to-face contact, are going to request more of. There's going to be less use of office space, more use of production space when it actually does require face-to-face interaction. Businesses that require people to work and collaborate together physically will have more space between workers. Of course, I've mentioned the increased sanitation protocol. There's going to be a lot more regulations on businesses as far as sanitation. There's likely to be higher healthcare costs because of people dealing with post-COVID-19 syndrome. But we're going to see a lot less physical contact between people that know each other, are in the same family bubble. We're going to see people paying a lot more attention to their health, which will mean higher health insurance premiums and also more use in the medical facilities. Businesses that are able to adapt to changing environments are the ones that are going to do the best, though. And the environment's going to continue to change. Of course, the biggest concern for long-term impact on the economy has to deal with the potential for severe cost-push inflation or stagflation if it lasts longer than a year, sticking around for a long time to come. And this is primarily a result of increased regulations, increased need to change operational bases, and also increased taxes to pay down national debt from all the stimulus spending and maintenance that was happening in the economy for the government to prevent people from being evicted and losing their homes, preventing businesses from going under that needed to stay afloat, and so forth. Costs will probably be felt for at least a decade to come. The main thing that I would continue to be encouraged about, though, is that businesses that will innovate, they will find different ways to operate under the so-called new normal, they will do well. And this is what we want to foster here at Lone Star College University Park, innovation. But the thing is, this kind of innovation for the next few years, clean operations, socially distanced operations, delivery, remote operations, decentralized operations, those are going to be the words we're going to be hearing for the next decade. My name is Hank Lewis, and I thank you for your time.